That's right.
And I think you're going to be intrigued by some of these numbers that we found. Hopefully, it will enlighten you and maybe increase your awareness of how serious of a problem it is that we have bullying in school. But the first one we find is that
bullying is increasing in schools and physical violence is decreasing.
Yeah. What we're seeing is that the kids have learned that when I hit, strike, or punch, I get kicked out of school. There's an immediate response, and that immediate response is typically punitive, suspension. Of course, now we have to go home and have to face my parents, and that elevated awareness is not something that is favorable to a child. So children have figured out we ain't going to fight in school. Mm-hmm. But they have figured out, if you will, that we can push each other around emotionally. And I was caveating that to what we have also seen in the domestic violence world, where in physically assaultive families, when there is a partner that was physically assaulting their partner and they went through some type of domestic violence intervention, later on in follow-up studies, they find that, yes, that person has decreased in the incidence of physical violence, but emotional abuse has increased. So it's not unusual that we see with assaultive families where the physical assault goes down, but the emotional assault increases. Why? People don't get arrested for emotional abuse, but they do get arrested for physical violence. It's called battery. Maybe that's what's happening also in schools. If the evidence of a physical assault is so apparent, it's immediately acted on. The child becomes is suspended. Everybody's involved. There is a punishment. So to that end, physical violence is decreasing in school, but bullying is increasing. Interesting statistic. Number 2.
86% of kids report that they have been picked on, that they have been made fun of, and that they've been bullied in school.
You know, when I think of 86%, to me, that just about means everybody. I mean, the only kids that might not have said they were picked on or bullied would be the bullies. You know, there's the 14% right there. But it shows that it's a chronic problem. And that is, as we look at the children that are in school, we see that it's happening so much that, you know, if the majority of 100 is only 51, well, we're at 86. Right. We're seeing that there's evidence that this is a chronic problem. The kids are aware of it. It's happening every day. It exists. It's real. It's there. And we need to do something about it.
Right.
Third statistic I think is important.
That a victim of bullying is twice as likely to take his or her own life compared to someone that's not a victim.
See, we're talking about suicide.
Right. And we are hearing more and more in the news about kids that have committed suicide.
It's absolutely alarming when I saw the numbers, the statistics for, you know, suicide for kids or teenagers. It's been on the increase for several years.
And lots of times when what you'll hear is they do the follow-up stuff is that when they go looking at the child's life, that there's evidence that the child has been bullied, and that sometimes it isn't always extreme in terms of what an adult would think, but this is a child's world. This is their social structure and their friend environment, and it was an awful place to live.
You know, my suspicion is, of course, as they do the follow-up studies and they see that the child was in fact bullied, what they also found is that the child had a sense of hopelessness, that it wouldn't stop. Right. There was nowhere to go. There was no one to talk to. And because we get that idea of hopelessness, you know, as a mental health professional, I will tell you one of the tests that we often make when we look for a person who possibly has suicide ideation is, you know, do you see your life as hopeless? Do you have a feeling that you cannot be successful, you cannot win, that you're going nowhere? And when we see that elevated sense of hopelessness, then the questions would increase about, do you have a plan? Have you thought about it? Right. So when there's these follow-up investigations that find that children that are victimized through bullying have a higher incidence of suicide, that's alarming. It's alarming.
Yes, it is.
The fourth bullet that we're going to talk about is?
The boys are more accepting of being bullied than girls.
You know, we teach in our parenting class about position and status and how, as children go through transitional developmental stages, that there's a normal outcome for all children to attempt to, you know, figure out how do they fit in.
Right.
Am I bigger? Am I stronger? That idea of masculinity, where we're more competitive, where we tend to wrestle. I see, you know, we have a son who's 14, and we've seen where, you know, they wrestle out in the swimming pool, and I'm bigger than you, and look at me, I'm gonna manhandle and show you that I'm stronger. You know,
and then they find the weaknesses, and we do see this where they'll find a weakness or something that they think is less masculine, less like being a boy, and they'll target that thing about the child.
So the key word here is accepting. The fact that boys are more accepting of bullying, whereas a girl might say, this is not something we should do. This is not something that I or you should participate in. what we're seeing is the boys say, okay, well, yeah, we do it. And so what? Yes, that's part of it. Well, again, the statistic, we need to change that. Think about it. Just be aware. Boys tend to be more tolerant. They tend to allow it to occur.
Right.
The next statistic, which is?
This one rolls right into that one. Boys tend to bully more directly, while girls tend to be more indirect. And it's kind of what we were just talking about. A boy will look right at you and say, I don't like that.
That's the direct.
And that's the direct. Whereas a girl is more likely to
do things that are indirect.
Spread rumors.
I don't invite you to a party that I'm having. You text message me, I don't text message you back. Or I text message someone else some rumor about something you've done that I don't like, and it gets back to you through your social support group. Facial expressions and body language would be an indirect way of doing business.
That's right.
Whereas a boy would say, I just don't like you. The girl might not say it, but just give you a face that shows that I'm displeased, I'm unhappy.
Right.
Turn your back, not answer the telephone, that kind of stuff. That's what we're talking about. We're looking at the idea of indirect. Okay.
Yes.
The next statistic.
1 in 4 teachers don't see anything wrong with bullying and only intervene. They intervene less than 4% of the time.
1 in 4. So the idea that some teachers perceive it as a necessary growth issue, that children are jockeying for position and status and don't recognize it as bullying. I don't think they identify it as bullying. I think they identify it as just kids working for hierarchy and status.
Yeah.
And because I really believe that if any teacher saw it as an intentional act of abuse, they would say, oh, no, that's not right.
Right. And yet, at the very first statistic, it's epidemic. 86% of kids.
86%.
It's epidemic in our country, and part of it is we have this thought that it's okay.
Yeah. Remember, though, it's an intentional act that's meant to be mean.
And it's not okay.
And it's not okay. The next statistic says that
physical bullying peaks in middle school and declines in high school. Verbal abuse rates remain constant from elementary all the way to high school. So this indirect stuff starts as we jockey for position, status. I think I'm bigger. I'm going to show you that I am, and I'm going to get you to have to, give me your lunch money or whatever.
So middle school is what grade?
Middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th here in Florida, and that's pretty much across the country now, I think.
Okay, and how old would you be in 6th grade?
11, 12.
11, 12. So when I look at that particular statistic, I'm thinking about just the sheer size of a child. And I'm thinking, because I'm looking at the male children, the boys. And so, when you get to high school, these kids are pretty good, pretty big.
Yeah.
So the power of a person being physically assaulted, especially in high school, is much more evident, because now that little nudge with my hand is not a nudge, it's a significant push. I often find myself telling my son, hey, you don't understand how big you are. You don't understand your power. You're doing things that you think are fun, but they could be potentially harmful. I think what we're seeing here is by the time kids get to high school, they've recognized how big they are. They recognize that these things that I do, when I might have done it a few years ago, wasn't so powerful, but today it is more powerful. Sure. And I'm going to not do it because I'm going to get in trouble. So it could be that they're learning the power of their bodies and the idea that violence is more evident. So this is something we're going to stay away from. But the idea that emotional abuse is increasing, look at the tools they're using as a bully. I'm not going to be physically assaulted, but I'm going to be emotionally assaulted.
Right.
Okay, and the next one is 60% of students who experience harassment at school never report the incident to the school teachers.
Right.
60% of those that experience bullying never report it. What's interesting about this is when they went and asked these children, why didn't you report it? What did they say? They said, we didn't think it would make a difference.
Right. Nobody was going to do anything anyway.
Yeah. The idea that the teacher, that the principal, that the authorities involved don't have an impact, can't have an impact on this thing that's occurring.
Don't listen. Don't get involved. Right.
Yeah. You're in the front office. I'm in the classroom. What's happening in the schoolyard, in the cafeteria, you're not watching, you're not seeing. I got to live it.
That's right.
These are important statistics, and I think they're relevant, and I hope they give you some information. Now, these are just statistics that we picked that were meaningful. I'm sure there's more out there, and if you find some more information, that's great. Send me an email about that.
Right.
But for the most part, those are the big things that we thought were real important. As we go from that topic, Carrie's got something she wants to discuss.
We want to kind of talk about the 4 types of bullying, because one of the things that I found is when I talked about bullying, people obviously got the physical bullying part, but really didn't understand the other components. And there's four types of bullying. There's the physical bullying, hit, strike, punch. There's emotional bullying, which can be intimidation. It can be name calling. It can be spreading rumors, playing practical jokes. Okay, so this tends to be the lower level stuff that's not going to get you in trouble. That's the emotional bullying. And then there's cyberbullying, which is it's a newer form of bullying in my mind. This is where I can text. I find that kids do a lot of that, and they don't necessarily have conversations, and so they may say something about somebody through a text, get their feelings hurt, it starts going around. It's not always intentionally done initially, but with a bully, it will be intentionally done, and they use texting, they use the internet, they use Facebook to spread derogatory comments, rumors about a person. And there it's this targeted thing. I want you to not feel good about yourself. I want you to know I don't like you. It is done with the intent to be mean to the child.
I want to go back to that idea of physical and just give you just a little bit more elaboration on that. Because the idea is that for me to abuse you physically, I had to have hit or strike you or punch you and have physical contact. But I just want to expand that a little bit to point out that, a lot of children are just fearful of being hit. So the idea that I threaten you, and that is an emotional component. I'm not going to take that away.
Right.
But when they've felt themselves pushed or shoved, and they feel that power, and then there's the threat of the abuse of power again, I still think that's predominantly physical, although there is an emotional component. Also, if you will, I got to add in there the idea that I can not only physically assault you, but I can instill some fear in you if I threaten to not just harm you, but maybe I'm going to break your bicycle, break your iPod, smash your phone.
Oh, absolutely.
The idea that I can physically deprive you from something that, you'll go and say, look, he stepped on my phone. And yet the truth is there may be no system in place to prove the person destroyed your personal material.
Right.
So as I look at that physical, yes, it is hit, strike, or punch, but also can be that I'm fearful of it occurring again if it's happened before. And if it was done secretly, like in the bathroom or someplace unseen, then I can have fear of more physical acts to happen. But also I can have the idea that you've told me you're going to do other things, like break my bike or break my iPod or that kind of stuff. So I wanted to add that in there under that notion of physical. Okay.